President Biden is set to speak with Chinese President Xi Jinping just hours from now, and the stage is set for a contentious phone call as the U.S. warns it will punish Beijing for coming to Russia's aid in the war in Ukraine.
Congressman Greg Steube, House Foreign Affairs Committee member and Iraq War combat veteran, joins us now. Congressman, great to have you. The world cannot afford bumbling Joe Biden on this one. What tone does Joe Biden need to strike with Xi?
Well, he needs to take a very strong tone, but you know that's not going to happen because we haven't seen that type of strength come from this White House. But he needs to take the tone that if these types of activities are going to happen, if they're going to give weapons to the Russians, there's going to be real sanctions. There's going to be real repercussions for those actions. I just don't have a lot of faith and confidence that that's the type of conversation that they're going to have.
You know, Congressman, looking into the future, say, for instance, China does invade Taiwan. How does the U.S. sanction China when our economies are so closely linked? People are concerned that sanctions on Russia would backfire on the U.S. That would be tenfold with China. So how does the U.S. handle that?
Well, we have a much different relationship diplomatically with Taiwan than we do with Ukraine. There's a number of agreements that we have to defend them militarily if, in fact, the Chinese decide to invade Taiwan. So it'd be a completely different situation than what you're seeing in the Ukraine. But there's a lot of things that we can do. The Republican Study Committee that I'm a part of, we've issued a very long bill of all the sanctions that we would put in place that would put America first. We saw that agenda under Trump. We saw how successful that agenda is. And the American people support that. We should put our country first and not China or Russia or the Iranians.
Speaking of the Iranians, the White House considering removing the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps from the foreign terror list in an attempt to sign this nuclear deal. Congressman, of all the horrible ideas from this White House, where does this latest permutation of the Iran deal stand?
Well, and they've given the authority to negotiate this deal to the Russians. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. You would actually think that these people intend to bring harm to our country and are allowing this to happen. I mean, the thought that we're going to get into a deal with the Iranians that would give them a path to a nuclear warhead, and oh, by the way, then allow Russia to bypass all of the Western sanctions and the United States sanctions through this deal is beyond the pale. I don't know why anybody would think that this is a good idea. Putting the Iranians on a nuclear path is a horrible idea, and then releasing the Iranian terrorist organization, the Revolutionary Guard, off the terrorist watch list. They're the #1 state sponsor of terror in the world, and we're going to relieve sanctions and relieve them from a terror watch list, which would open up billions of dollars of revenue to those terrorist regimes.
Yeah, and you know, the Biden administration says that they need to enter this deal so Iran doesn't obtain a nuclear weapon. But lifting sanctions on a rogue nation that is close to obtaining a nuclear weapon isn't a good idea either. So how does the U.S. play this? Is there any way that the U.S. can play this so 5 years down the road, Iran doesn't have nuclear capabilities?
Well, what we should do is what we did under the Trump administration and not get out of a deal like that, not even be negotiating with a regime that chants death to America and death to Israel. That's the last thing that we should be doing. We should continue the sanctions against the Iranian regime because it has completely hampered their economic status. If we got back into this deal and lifted sanctions, and if we allowed this terrorist regime not to be designated as a terrorist state, it opens up billions of dollars of revenue to a terrorist regime who, oh, by the way, is going to backdoor that through the Russians and give the Russians the ability to avoid Western sanctions. Completely the opposite direction that our country should be going right now.
Congressman Greg Steube, it is the head scratcher of all head scratchers. Doesn't make any sense. Appreciate you being on. Break it down for us.
Thank you, Congressman.
American